Good morning, colleagues. I would like to bring us to order. Before the start of our session, I did want to take a moment to express condolences for the passing away of the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah, yesterday on the 29th of September. So, our condolences to the people of Kuwait. I will now move forward with opening our session. Before getting to the first item on the agenda, I had a few sort of housekeeping points to make. The first is we are still waiting for a nomination for chair of the drafting committee. So I would ask that drafting committee members send us a nomination, preferably by lunchtime today, by the middle of the day, so that because this committee does need to approve that nomination before the work of the drafting committee can start. And just another reminder of our hardworking interpreters and helping them out as much as we can by sending in your statements in advance so that they have those to refer to when struggling with sometimes difficult connections. And to speak slowly as well. And then the usual reminder of brevity to the extent possible in members' interventions. I don't want to start with a stopwatch and timing 3 minutes, so let's try to be disciplined on our own this morning and see how we go. So I will now move to the next item on our agenda, which is item 2.9, the Voluntary Code of Conduct for Food Loss and Waste Reduction. The relevant document is COAG 2020/13. The introductory note by the Secretariat was made available on the COAG webpage. And so I will be opening the floor directly for discussion. I will note this was one of the items that one regional group had identified as of concern because of late documents, but I'd like to just open the floor so we can, I can hear from the members and we can get a sense of where members are at in terms of being able to engage on this topic. So I will open the floor now for discussion by members. So the floor is now open for requests. I will give the floor to the Dominican Republic, followed by Kenya. Dominican Republic, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Muy buenos días.
Hello, everyone. Yesterday, we observed the first International Day of Awareness against food waste. Never has any theme been more appropriate than this to call everyone's attention to the threats which exist to food security and nutrition. Statistics on food loss and waste are really a cause for concern. We know that developing countries have enormous post-harvest losses due to a wide range of reasons. The lack of appropriate storage space in barns, the lack of vehicles and infrastructure to transport produce to the markets, or shortcomings in the refrigeration chain to conserve perishable produce. As we are also aware, food is also wasted in developed countries and in the highest socioeconomic layers of the developing countries, where the final consumer simply fritters away food. FAO calculates that every year we throw away more than 300 million tons of food which is in perfectly good state. The reasons for food loss and waste point the way towards its prevention. On the one hand, in order to reduce losses, we need effective regulatory frameworks which are based on a food systems approach with a component of investment in infrastructure. On the other hand, in order to reduce waste, we have to raise our citizens' awareness with education campaigns conducted at all levels, from the early years of school right through to the adult population. In both cases, we have to boost our associations involving all stakeholders, including civil society, the private sector, the academic world, and public institutions. Finally, the Dominican Republic is working on legislation to address food waste and loss, and welcomes with enthusiasm the efforts being conducted by COAG on this front, supporting a framework of good practices which we want to see emerging from the current policy recommendations approved by the CFS in 2014. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominican Republic, for starting us off with a short intervention. I give the floor to Kenya, followed by Germany. Kenya, you have the floor.
Kenya gives the statement on the voluntary code of conduct of food loss and waste reduction on behalf of Africa Regional Group. The Africa Regional Group acknowledges the comprehensive document prepared by FAO management on this topic. We consider this to be a very important subject to be addressed at all levels, in particular now with the rising cases of malnutrition and micronutrient deficiencies, as well as negative impacts of climate change on agricultural production and productivity. Chairperson, we welcome the proposed document on voluntary code of conduct for food loss and waste reduction, and note the inclusive nature of its development that brought together the relevant stakeholders across the regions. We also note that it adopts a food systems approach and aligned with interconnected SDGs. Indeed, this document is very detailed, giving very clear guiding principles to the different stakeholders and food system actors. Chairperson, with the world population projected to reach about 10 billion by 2050, majority of whom will be in the urban areas and demanding for more resource-intensive and perishable food products, there is need for a more structured way of reducing or eliminating complete food loss and wastage. Indeed, efforts are required to transition food systems into a sustainable trajectory so they deliver safe, affordable, and healthy diets to the world's rapidly growing population. Chairperson, the central role of smallholder farmers, particularly in Africa, cannot be overemphasized. We therefore call upon FAO to work in close partnership with host governments to include smallholder farmers in documenting, adapting, and upscaling indigenous knowledge, practices, and innovations, which may vary from region to region or even within the same country. Chairperson, we also note that different sectors and subsectors make different contributions to the food loss and waste reduction. We encourage FAO to coordinate implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of the COC with all stakeholders. We also appreciate this as a living document to be reviewed as and when necessary, while taking into account regional and global technical, economic, and social changes. We believe remarks, the African Regional Group endorses the proposed voluntary code of conduct for food loss and waste reduction. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Kenya. Germany, followed by Canada. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor, and good morning to everyone. I'm honored to speak on behalf of the European Union and its 27 member states. We welcome the proposed voluntary code of conduct on food loss and waste reduction, which we consider to be a comprehensive and well-developed document. We appreciate the inclusive process to elaborate it. We stress the need to follow a holistic approach and to include the whole food chain, from farm to fork, in the work to reduce food loss and waste. Otherwise, there is a risk that resources will be pushed backwards or forwards along the chain, still leading to loss and waste, but just in another part of the chain. In this regard, prevention is key, as mentioned in the document. We would also like to highlight the need for continued cooperation between FAO and other relevant actors and all stakeholders along the whole food supply chain. In this regard, we miss a reference to the related CFS HLPE report and policy recommendations on food losses and waste in the context of sustainable food systems adopted in 2014. Along these lines, collaboration with other UN organizations like UNEP would also be indispensable. We look forward to the Food System Summit 2021 and further steps in the work to reduce food loss and waste, which have considerable impact in terms of food security, nutrition, as well as climate change and environmental degradation. Food loss and waste occur throughout the food chain, but exactly where the food loss and waste occur differs between countries. In addition, the drivers, causes, and options for action vary among sectors and parts of the chain. Working together, learning and sharing experience is key. The Code of Conduct is an important step forward in the global work in this regard. There is also a clear business case for reducing food loss and waste, as the money spent is returned many times over. It strengthens producers, food production, food security, and nutrition. We believe the voluntary code of conduct on food loss and waste reduction can be helpful in this respect. Preventing food loss and waste is usually profitable, and reducing food loss and waste is therefore a win-win for companies, consumers, and societies. Finally, if we reduce food loss and waste so that more of what is produced is consumed, we will improve environmental, economic, and social sustainability and therefore contribute to a better future. The EU supports the voluntary code of conduct on food loss and waste reduction and the actions suggested in the document, to endorse it and agree to forward it for consideration of the next FAO Council. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Germany. Canada, followed by Australia. Canada, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Canada recognizes the interconnected economic, environmental, and societal burden of food loss and waste, and supports food system-based approaches to addressing these challenges. Under the Food Policy for Canada, our ambitious roadmap for a healthier and more sustainable food system, Canada has identified food loss and waste as a priority for near-term action. Recognizing the diversity of determinants and solutions for food loss and waste across food systems and countries, Canada is supportive of the voluntary, collaborative, and whole of society approach as proposed in the Code of Conduct. Canada is supportive of the broad framework elements within the Code of Conduct, including measurement and monitoring, target setting, strategy development, policy coherence, engagement and collaboration, and research and development. Framework elements will support countries' actions to address food loss and waste and progress towards UN Sustainable Development Goal 12, Target 12.3. Canada supports the Voluntary Code of Conduct initiative, but recommends expanding the definition of circular economy within it to ensure that the definition reflects the biological as well as the technical aspects of the economy. Canada endorses the proposed follow-up actions and the role of the FAO to develop tools to support members in the application of the Code of Conduct and monitoring and reporting to the Committee on Agriculture on its implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Canada. Australia, then Japan. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Australia is committed to reducing food loss and waste. We launched a national food waste strategy in November of 2017 with the target of halving food waste in Australia by 2030. We are also currently establishing an independent food waste governance entity that will deliver Australia's voluntary commitment program for food waste, a program that we expect will make the largest contribution to Australia's food loss and waste reduction target. We believe the Voluntary Code of Conduct to be a comprehensive framework that, once endorsed, should be favourably considered for adoption by countries. At a national level, Australia will work to ensure that the work of our National Food Waste Strategy addresses many of the actions put forward in the Voluntary Code. We would like to greatly appreciate the inclusive efforts to facilitate participation of experts from around the world in the open-ended working group for review of the Code of Conduct. Australia particularly welcomed the flexible approach to timetabling that minimised time zone issues. Australia looks forward to working together on next steps and would welcome further information on what the monitoring and implementation of the Code may mean in practice, and whether there would be ongoing reporting requirements for countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. Japan, then New Zealand. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Today, we want to share our effort to food loss and waste reduction shortly. In Japan, Act on Promotion of Food Loss and Waste Reduction have taken effect in October 2019. Based on the law, the basic policy was established in March 2020. Through this policy framework, Japan is making effort for food loss and waste reduction with interministerial cooperation. We support to endorse the COC with understanding that each country takes the priority and national context into consideration when we apply policy instrument referred in the COC. Finally, according to the paragraph 6.4 in the document, FAO will monitor the application and implementation of the COC and report to COAG. If FAO plans to require national report, we would like to ask FAO investigation of the necessity, because there is SDGs framework and repetition of the same reporting should be avoided. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. New Zealand, then UK. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair. We thank the FAO for the development of this voluntary code of conduct to help countries, producers and consumers to reduce their food loss and waste. New Zealand is a firm proponent of global action to reduce food loss and waste. We recognise it as one of the key actions countries can take to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and transition to sustainable food systems. In principle, we note the Code of Conduct provides a useful overview of the issues and possible drivers of food loss and waste. It also includes some key principles that can inform actions. We note these guidelines are voluntary and that they cover a great breadth of possible approaches to addressing and reducing food loss and waste. This is useful as some approaches will be more relevant and some less, dependent on specific national and regional circumstances. One area where we think that we think could be more prominent particularly for addressing food loss, is the inefficiency caused by the overuse of direct subsidies to agriculture and fisheries, and the importance of avoiding trade distorting measures to ensure supply chain efficiency. Removing trade distortions also drives a more efficient allocation of resources for food production, while also providing viable alternative export destinations for food products that don't meet local demands. We acknowledge that many actions to tackle food loss and waste should be taken at the local level and in short supply chains, including in times of stress such as during the current COVID pandemic. However, we emphasise that this should not come at the expense of the efficiency, sustainability and dietary benefits of broad supply chains such as are provided by the global trading system. And in this light, we remind colleagues of the joint statement of the heads of the FAO, WTO and WHO during earlier this year, which stressed that when acting to protect the health and well-being of their citizens, countries should ensure that any trade-related measures do not disrupt the food supply chain, as such disruptions, including hampering the movement of agricultural food and industry workers and extending border delays, result in spoilage of perishables and increasing food waste. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, New Zealand. UK, followed by China. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
A very good morning to you, Madam Chair, our colleagues and the interpreters. The UK supports the voluntary code of conduct for food loss and waste reduction. The UK is working towards Sustainable Development Goal 12.3 to halve food waste at the consumer and retail level by 2030 and reduce food loss across the supply chain. The UK government supports action to redistribute surplus food to humans or animal feed to prevent it becoming waste, and consumer campaigns such as Love Food, Hate Waste to promote good behaviours to citizens to reduce household food waste. There has been significant progress in the UK so far, with total food waste levels falling by 480,000 tonnes, a 7% reduction per person between 2015 and 2018. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, United Kingdom. China, followed by Philippines. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you all. China also would like to thank the FAO for the voluntary code of conduct. Global food loss and waste is staggering, with huge amounts of food being wasted every year in China alone. Therefore, President Xi Jinping has also emphasized we need to take effective measures and mechanisms to resolutely stop food and beverage waste. China's measures to reduce food loss and waste have been widely welcomed by our citizens. China supports the FAO in conducting inclusive consultations on reducing food loss and waste and encourages the FAO to support member nations in accordance with national and regional differences in voluntarily adopting measures that are suited to their local conditions to reduce food loss and waste and continuously improve global food security. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. Philippines, followed by Switzerland. Philippines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone. The Philippines appreciates FAO in crafting the voluntary code of conduct on food loss and waste reduction, which would be able to serve as a tool in minimizing the negative impacts of food loss and waste to the environment and its people, especially the vulnerable groups, including women, the youth, elderly, smallholders, and family farmers. Its timeliness comes with the celebration of the first International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste yesterday. We note that the Code of Conduct is not meant to be a how-to-do manual comprised of technical prescriptions on addressing food loss and waste in specific contexts, as indeed no one size fits all. For instance, while we understand that for uniformity purposes, the Code of Conduct recommends measuring the food loss index and food waste index, particularly in tracking progress of SDG indicator 12.3.1a. However, as informed by our Philippine Center for Post-Harvest Development and Mechanism, there could be other loss measurement methodologies, such as those developed by the World Research Institute, Fusions of EU, and Rethink Food Waste of the USA for food loss and waste measurements. In light of these comments, the Philippines endorses the voluntary code of conduct on food loss and waste reduction and the committee action suggested in the reference document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Philippines. Thailand followed by Norway. Thailand, you have the floor.
Around the world, the ways that contributed to Thank you, Madam Chair. Please allow me to remind us that yesterday was the first International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste. As we celebrate, we have to remind about 700 million people still suffer from hunger, while 1,300 tons of food in landfills around the world are wasted, contributing to 8% of greenhouse gases, a total cost equivalent approximately 2.6 trillion US dollars per year, according to FAO. Thailand is fully aware that reduction of food loss and waste significantly contribute to food security, sustainable food systems, economic and environment conservation. We have made attempts to tackle this food waste crisis in order to achieve SDGs, in particular the SDG 12.3, that targeting 50% reduction of food loss and waste by 2030. However, we cannot monitor and evaluate what we cannot measure. With this regard, Thailand recently invested 20 million baht in research and development program to develop data collecting techniques to estimate quantitative food loss and waste in the collaboration with the FAO. This will provide a basis to develop a national food loss and waste database on which policy can be formulated. We encourage FAO to continue providing technical support in developing the appropriate methodology to form sound policy on food loss and waste. Regarding Code of Conduct on Food Loss and Waste, we recognize its important role in contributing to food loss and waste reduction along the supply chain. Therefore, we urge FAO to continue its support in developing tools and statistical methodology to enhance the capacity of members in conducting national and regional data on food loss and waste. With this statement, Thailand endorses the proposed voluntary code of conduct for food loss and waste reduction, as well as the proposed follow-up actions for FAO as mentioned in paragraph 10 to 12, and agree to forward it for consideration for the next FAO Council. The COAG endorsement of the proposed voluntary code of conduct would certainly represent a significant contribution to yesterday's celebrations. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you, Thailand, Norway, then Sudan. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone. Now I wish to thank the Secretariat for preparation of the document for this agenda item. Reducing food loss and waste is key to food security and nutrition and to improve the sustainability of food systems. To become more sustainable, food systems must optimize the use of resources. Hence, the water, land, energy, and other natural resources used to produce food that no one consumes make food loss and waste a key issue for the broader 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We wish to thank the FAO for the inclusive process on the work on the guidelines. The guidelines will provide countries and all relevant stakeholders with guiding principles, actions, and measures that contribute to food loss and waste reduction. In particular, Norway wishes to highlight the food material hierarchy, which provides a guide on how resources can be used in the most resource-efficient way possible. Secondly, we wish to highlight that Norway has positive experience with voluntary agreements and cooperation between public and private actors. We welcome the recommendations in the guidelines in this area. Madam Chair, food loss and waste occurs at all levels of activities in the food value chain and for many different reasons. It is important to understand what causes loss and to identify the pathways to reduce food loss and waste. Norway continues to develop knowledge in this field on national level, and we note with appreciation that the document also envisaged further work. We believe that more context-specific technical guidelines to permit practical application in particular situations have been prepared by the FAO for the fishery sector, and we propose to build on experience with this work and to look at synergies in a cross-sectoral manner. With these comments, Norway endorses the proposed voluntary code of conduct for food loss and waste reduction and the proposed follow-up actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. Sudan, followed by Chile. Sudan, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair. In Sudan, we have been working on food loss and waste, and with the support of FAO, we decided to create a technical committee in order to establish studies about the main harvests in the Sudan. Likewise, we think about working on food loss and waste when it comes to livestock. We have been working very hard on a plan to avoid food loss and waste, and we have been in close contact with FAO and with our colleagues from the Near East and North Africa group. We believe that this document is a valuable tool if we are to establish a national strategy aiming at decreasing food loss and waste. We are concerned that food loss and waste has reached 20 to 30% of harvests, which prompts us to work extra hard in order to achieve the expected objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudan. Chile, followed by Switzerland. Chile, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We welcome the document COAG/2020/13. We welcome this plan for a voluntary code of conduct. However, our competent authorities have not yet had the time to examine this text. Though we have made an initial analysis, we do have edits to suggest. In point 4.8.6.4, we wish to remove the phrase of on local and seasonal food so that it would read as follows: if necessary, governmental actors should incentivize the establishment of short supply chains. These types of food chains link producers and consumers, and they can be an efficient way to reduce food loss and waste, and at the same time they can have positive impacts in terms of local development and environmental sustainability. And then we'd remove the last part of that about maintaining the nutritional value of food, as the document does not provide evidence that short supply chains foster maintaining the nutritional content. In 5.63, we consider the important role of international food trade and the importance of addressing food loss and waste all along the chain and in food systems. We suggest removing 5.62 and 5.103 because efforts to reduce FLW cannot run counter to international food trade, particularly for net food importing countries or countries which need to import certain foods such as fruit and vegetables. I mentioned the numbers, and so I'd like to align myself with the statement made by New Zealand, particularly regarding the importance of international trade. These are just a few preliminary comments about the document, and we present them for the consideration of the COAG. The conclusions on this topic, we feel, should use the language used in COAG 26 about the Code of Conduct on Fertilizers, in particular in paragraphs 52 and 53 and 54, which welcomed the Code of Conduct with certain observations and questions, and in paragraph 54 recommended the Bureau to carry out an inclusive consultative process to have a revised text to present to the FAO Council at its next period of sessions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chile, also for those concrete suggestions. Switzerland, followed by Nigeria. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Switzerland welcomes the voluntary code of conduct for food loss and waste reduction. Avoiding food loss and waste plays a major role in the transformation towards sustainable food systems. The Code of Conduct represents a good basic document which gives an overview of possible starting points and measures to reduce food loss and waste. We share the view that this document needs to be supplemented with more concrete documentation and other follow-up actions. Regarding para 10C of the main document, we would like to see clarification on the term technical guidelines on food loss and waste reduction in particular situations. What are these particular situations? Lastly, in paragraph 12, it is not clear to us how FAO will monitor the application and implementation of the COC and report to COAG on progress made. Does this mean that member states have to report on the application of the COC? With these comments, we can endorse the voluntary code of conduct on food loss and waste reduction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Switzerland. Nigeria, followed by US. Nigeria, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, interpreters. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning. The voluntary code of conduct for food loss and waste is a key document that has been well prepared by the FAO management for the use of every nation. It has been well worked upon, researched, showing that 3 million tons of food is wasted every year. This is a colossal amount of material that could be useful for so many people, particularly the vulnerable, and with the issue of nutrition getting more acute, there's urgent need for action on the ground. Nigeria agrees completely with the statement read by Kenya on behalf of the African group and by all colleagues that have spoken. It is time to have a strong awareness campaign across the world to the local level so that everyone will be aware and efforts will be made, even at household level, to allow this voluntary guideline on food loss and waste to be translated into action. Thank you very much. Nigeria fully endorsed the voluntary code of conduct for food loss and waste. Out and over.
Thank you, Nigeria. US, followed by Indonesia. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States acknowledges the need for a more integrated, multi-stakeholder food systems approach to addressing the complex challenges of reducing food loss and waste. While the United States is supportive of the direction the proposed voluntary code of conduct is taking, we have the following concerns. Framed within a food systems approach and aligned with the interconnected SDGs, the proposed voluntary code of conduct addresses both food loss and food waste within the same document. The proposed voluntary code of conduct can be improved by focusing solely on food loss and waste reduction. For example, Article 3's guiding principles, Article 1's text on human rights, and paragraph 4.6.2 are not all directly focused on food loss and waste reduction. The proposed voluntary code of conduct can be improved by refining the activities and oversight of government actors versus the private sector in section 4.8. For example, in paragraph 4.8.6.2, some of the examples of unfair practices would be part of private contracts. The US agrees on the need articulated in this proposed voluntary code of conduct for a more integrated multi-stakeholder food systems approach. And we appreciate the work of FAO in developing this aspirational proposed voluntary code of conduct. However, given that many components are not practical and or appropriate for all targeted stakeholders, we request and reiterate the need for FAO to keep this code of conduct voluntary and non-binding and focused on, in fact, food loss and waste. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. Indonesia, followed by Peru. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. We commend the important role of FAO in developing the voluntary code of conduct for food and loss and waste reduction that provide a benchmark and a framework for developing national, regional, and global strategies on the prevention, reduction, and management of the food loss and waste. The COC presents guiding principles that should be followed in implementing by the countries and their stakeholders in contributing to the food loss and waste reduction to sustainable food system development and to achieving the SDGs. Indonesia has participated in providing input during the discussion of the proposed COC. Food loss and waste calls for actions by different actors and on different levels and need context-specific solutions. At the national level, we have made efforts to reduce food loss and waste in line with the new 5-year strategic development plan of Ministry of Agriculture for 2020-2024, which aim to achieve an independent, modernized, and prosperous agriculture. We have encouraged good agricultural practices along production and food supply chains to reduce food loss, including post-harvest losses, among others through modernizing of our agriculture sector. Further, promotion and education are continuously carried out to change people's behavior in food consumption to prevent and minimize food waste. In the face of the current pandemic, we would like to encourage FAO to continue assisting members in adopting holistic approaches and technologies to mitigate food loss and waste during and post-COVID-19. Last but not least, the Indonesia government would like to call on fellow colleagues and development partners to collaborate and share experiences and best practices in developing adequate framework for food loss and waste reduction, as well as implementing efforts to effectively reduce food loss and waste. With these comments, Madam Chairperson, we support the endorsement of the proposed voluntary COC for food loss and waste reduction. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Indonesia. Peru, followed by Argentina. Peru, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. In Peru, we share the interest and highlight the importance of having the voluntary code of conduct for food loss and waste reduction, which includes actions and measures which national and subnational authorities should adopt or implement. It's worth keeping in mind that reducing food loss and waste should be approached in a multi-sectoral and integrated manner, such that it will involve not only economic and environmental aspects, but also promote awareness raising about the need to create new habits and behaviors in both producers and consumers. In this line, Peru, as a member state of the United Nations, has been working within the framework for action offered by the Sustainable Development Goals, whose goal 12.3 highlights that by 2030, there should be a reduction by half of per capita food waste in retail and at consumer level, and that food loss in production and supply chains should be reduced, including post-harvest loss. Given all of that, in July of 2019, our country approved the law to promote the reduction and prevention of food loss and waste. It sets out that actions to prevent or reduce food loss and waste should take place at all stages of the food chain, from primary production to consumption. It's worth noting that this law sets out that part of its implementation will be carried out through the National Food Security and Nutrition Plan 2015-2021. Likewise, the regulation approved in 2020 considers that among various actions generating citizen participation with priority to consumer participation, in order to change attitudes about consumption habits and make them aware about the nutritional needs and the environmental, economic, and social impacts of their behavior. In addition, it seeks to promote information and educational campaigns to raise awareness about actions to reduce and prevent food loss and waste. It also fosters research and complementary actions linked to food donation. The regulation also has created our National Day of Awareness to reduce and prevent food loss and waste on the 12th of March of every year. This is a clear reference to the above-mentioned Target 12.2. Given the above, Peru supports the proposal for the voluntary code of conduct for food loss and waste reduction. And we urge that it be presented to the FAO Council for consideration at its next period of sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Peru. Argentina, followed by Brazil. Argentina, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Argentina appreciates the efforts made by the FAO in working on food loss and waste reduction, and we appreciate also the work of the Secretariat in drawing up this voluntary code of conduct. Reducing food loss and waste is a challenge which Argentina is strongly committed to overcoming, and so we appreciate the initiative to develop this code of conduct. We regret that the interpreters have lost the speaker.
Argentina, we've lost the sound. The last thing I heard was "we regret that," so that's where you should pick up. Maybe if you could try again.
¿Hasta dónde me han escuchado?
How far did you hear?
Sigo.
Continue. We regret that we did not have the Spanish version sufficiently in advance, because its relevance and its substance deserve exhaustive analysis by public bodies, at least in the case of the government of Argentina. We understand and appreciate the great effort made by the Secretariat in organizing this first virtual meeting, but it is important to have the translated version of the documents with sufficient time for us to examine them so that we can have an equal and rich debate on the topic. When it comes to the substance of the document, we do have a number of observations that we cannot express fully at this time due to time constraints. We would have appreciated a negotiation process after the technical consultations. I'll mention just a few of our main concerns. Some of them have already been expressed by Canada, New Zealand, Chile, and the United States. First of all, when it comes to the definition of the circular economy on page 6, we understand that this should refer to the model of production with including technical and biological cycles. In point 4, in 4.8.4, there is a call to adopt a circular bioeconomy approach and to support transitions from linear economies to other more circular economies, and we would appreciate greater flexibility in that language. In addition, we request that when there is reference made to nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement on climate change, that there be a mention as appropriate as the plans, measures, and sectoral policies under that agreement are defined by each party. This is the case in Article and point 4.6.2.1. In addition, we are concerned by the calls in the Code of Conduct to promote short supply trains and to create and encourage incentives to promote the consumption of local products, especially in points 4.6.5.4 and point 4.8.6.4 and point 5.2.10 and point 5.10.3, among others. We are not clear on why those short chains are more important than long ones. We understand that there's a risk of food loss and waste that is linked to certain practices, independent of the length of the chain. Nor should we lose sight of the fact that this code aims to promote sustainable food systems, which contribute to achieving sustainable development in its three forms. Eradicating hunger is key to this type of development, and the impact of promoting short supply chains on achieving these goals should not be ignored. These measures also cannot damage international trade, as that would harm the livelihoods of millions of producers who are located far away from consumption centers. Along the same lines, and finally, in 4.8.1, we see references to legal and standard instruments that include legislation, incentives, compensations, and facilitation measures. We recall that any incentive granted to the agricultural sector, including to establish food stocks, must be in line with commitments adopted in the WTO, including the Agreement on Agriculture and the ministerial decisions linked to this. In this regard, and given that we have further observations along these lines, we support the proposal made by Chile to have a negotiation process to improve this document before the next FAO Council for its adoption. In this regard, there is a recent precedent at the 26th session of this committee, at which time the committee welcomed the draft International Code of Conduct, but it was recognized that there were observations made and there was an indication to have a further negotiation process in order to examine the document further. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Argentina. I give the floor now to Brazil. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief in the interest of time. Following the statements here, we have heard on the one hand endorsements for this code of conduct, but on the other hand also many countries calling for a revision of the document. And as colleagues have already said, this reminds us of the similar case we found in the last COAG session on the code of conduct on fertilizers. And therefore, and considering the difficulties of getting into detail on the discussions on this document, we would also suggest the way forward proposed by Chile on this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil. I am checking. I've come to the end of my speakers list. So at this point, I will turn the floor to the Secretariat for a reply. I'll give the floor to, I'm not sure who's here. I give the floor to Maximo Torrero, FAO's Chief Economist. Maximo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. So thank you very much for the support for this topic, which is of crucial importance for us, for FAO, for all of you, for achieving SDG 2. We have taken note of the comments provided, and our process, given that this is voluntary guidelines, we can do some of the adjustments that has been required, but up to what we have seen, the majority of the countries have endorsed the code of conduct, which is of course a voluntary code of conduct. So in that sense, I don't see, I understand the issues raised by Argentina, Chile, and Brazil, specifically the issues related to promote short value chains.
And basically, this is a generic term in the sense that shouldn't go against any potential trade. Of course, it's basically trying to argue that in case that there are some issues, it's simpler to procure from shorter value chains, which not necessarily mean that they are localized in the same country, but that's something that the language could be clarified, so that it doesn't seem to be any constraints with regards to trade issues. So with that, I thanks for the comments, and I don't have nothing more to add into that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maximo, and thank you, members, for what was very efficient pass through of views. I think from my perspective, I have a bit of a dilemma because I also heard many countries, members expressing support, but then also some proposed edits, and then a proposal for a negotiation session after this session. I think what I would like to do is take a short pause, and I will consult with the Secretariat in terms of the comments that they heard and how many they were, and the possibility perhaps of revising that in real time, not in the near future, or whether it seems like we may need to consider another process. So I will call a very short pause here for somewhere around 4 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes. So we will reconvene in 5 minutes. Thank you. So yeah, so that's the easy thing. Like in terms, like people did have very specific.
You're unmuted, Chair. You're unmuted.
Yeah. Okay, I would like to reconvene now. I wanted to consult with the Secretariat in case they thought we might be able to revise this week, but there were a few members saying that they did require additional time. So I am not going to put the summary on the screen now. We'll go to the next agenda item just to give the Secretariat time to look at previous wording and put together a draft summary for us to look at this point. But I think we will be taking the suggestions from some members and proposing to the committee something, language similar to what was used at COAG 26 for the Code of Conduct on Fertilizer Use. And so with that, we will return to the summary later this morning, and we will move at this point to the next item on our agenda, which is item 2.7, rationale for a new FAO food safety strategy. The relevant document is COAG/2020/11. The introductory note by the Secretariat was already made available on the COAG webpage, and therefore I will move to open the floor directly for discussion and members' comments on the FAO food safety strategy. The floor is now open. I give the floor to Peru. Thank you. Peru, you have the floor. Peru is still muted, perhaps. There. Peru,
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Mil disculpas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I got the wrong button, sorry. Thank you. We recognise the importance attached to FAO by food safety, and this has been reflected in the new organic structure of the organisation. And we're seeing guidance, scientific advice being produced, and policies helping us towards achieving Agenda 2030. We would encourage FAO to work harder on this to support member countries to develop the capacity within their national systems in order to establish sustainable systems in order to bring an end to hunger and to provide healthy food for all. We welcome the development of this strategy, which focuses on health measures to be implemented by member states. And this means that it will be highlighted at world level, ensuring that we can move more closely towards food safety. Obviously, the responsibility for implementation of this strategy picks up also the question on AMR as well, and sustainable development. We find it positive that it reflects also many aspects of the One Health initiative, because many of the food safety issues also are cross-cutting in other sectors. As such, we would suggest that we could include interoperability between systems, because this theme would objectively reflect the One Health approach. In respect of the document itself, we would suggest that in paragraph 21, this change means that multi-sectoral policies on food safety require greater resources to strengthen national systems. Paragraph 22, the private sector provides food and input also for farming and agricultural systems. Family farming doesn't have adequate means to actually shoulder the responsibility established here. Turning now to paragraphs 23 and 24, we refer to population and urbanization, and we're talking here about cities where there is a high population concentration. We need to analyze this point of view from a social, economic and political point of view. What's driving the rural exodus, people moving into the cities, and people who move because their livelihoods cannot support them, and they're moving into a more competitive labour environment. That leaves an ageing population in the rural areas. In paragraph 25, we feel that systems which can affect food safety need to be transformed, because developing systems must recognise the importance of production and the producers who are producing foodstuffs of high nutritional value for the world. Another important aspect which should be reflected in the strategy is the so-called safety culture. In other words, within a given period of time, we have to understand safety beyond its technical aspects. It has to be seen as a moral commitment for the whole of society and responsible behaviour. This then could become cross-cutting amongst all of those people involved in the agricultural sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Peru. Australia, followed by the Dominican Republic. Australia, you have the floor.
Yeah. Without food safety, there is no food security. This is a really important message which we should all work together to socialise, so that not only is it well understood, but it is also automatically recognised and integrated as a key concept in international guidance pertaining to food security. Australia has long been an advocate for the important normative and standard-setting work the FAO does, and we welcomed the recent recognition afforded to this work by the FAO through the increase in funding for the International Plant Protection Convention and the joint FAO-WHO Scientific Advice Programme. We again express our thanks, and we encourage the FAO to continue to closely monitor these important areas to ensure that they are resourced sustainably, especially given the increase in priority activities stemming from the COVID-19 pandemic. We also welcome and support the FAO's commitment to the food safety agenda through the establishment of a new food safety strategy. This is an important strategy, and Australia looks forward to contributing to its development, its implementation, and to its periodic evaluation. Australia highlights that many of the concepts we have been discussing already this week equally apply to establishing this important document. In particular, we consider that the strategy should be founded upon a scientific, risk-based approach, and recommend that it encompasses strong interagency collaboration, especially with the WHO, in order to minimise duplication and maximise complementarity of outputs. Australia also encourages the FAO to incorporate clear, actionable and measurable key performance indicators within the strategy to enable robust monitoring and evaluation. This will help to ensure that its objectives are achieved in the short, medium and long term. Finally, Australia encourages FAO to ensure close alignment of the strategy with the work of the Codex Alimentarius Commission. For example, we see that the paper notes the importance of addressing food fraud and other issues currently actively under consideration by Codex. Australia considers the work of Codex to protect the health of consumers and ensure fair practices in food trade as an essential part of the food security narrative, especially for countries that rely on food imports for food security. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. Dominican Republic, followed by Sudan. Dominican Republic, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora. Thank you, Madam Chair. The delegation of the Dominican Republic shares the view that FAO needs a new food safety strategy together with WHO. We've already referred to the One Health initiative, which ties in closely with the issue we're now discussing. The times are right now to urge FAO to draw up a more action-oriented strategy along with diagnosis and also manuals, which means it will be important to support governments as well in implementing what already exists. Moreover, FAO should continue to build alliances, partnerships and synergies to ensure that safety-related issues can benefit from the exchange of knowledge and know-how, the transfer of technology and good practices, and the development of local capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. Dominican Republic, Sudan, followed by Indonesia. Sudan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mrs. President. On behalf of the Sudan, I wish to heartfully thank the COAG for the extensive efforts and that has led to the new food safety strategy, which is extremely important for the SDGs, especially the second and the third SDG. It is extremely important for public health and food trade, which is comprised of a series of stakeholders in the food chain. This food safety strategy is extremely important, and the Sudan considers it as a part of the One Health approach, which contributes also to tackling all diseases, including COVID-19. The FAO and the WHO has set the standards necessary for food through the strategy that we believe must take in consideration national strategies for food safety in the countries that have legislation that is in contrast among them, among each other. It is also extremely important to insist on the importance of this strategy. Countries have to follow food safety standards that protect health. I wish to insist on the role of the FAO and all organizations related to this issue in supporting countries, especially developing countries with limited resources, in building institutional and technical capacities and developing their general capacities. This strategy has to be an integral part of the overall strategy of the FAO. The strategy has to take into consideration how to guarantee food safety and englobe the objective of sustainable development. So we support this strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Indonesia, followed by Germany. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. We appreciate the role of FAO in developing new FAO food safety strategy as an effort to accelerate countries' achievement to the SDGs. The Indonesian government recognized the critical role of food safety and its contribution in achieving the development of a sustainable, resilient, and inclusive food system. Access to safe food is a basic human necessity and is essential for food and nutrition security to be achieved. In this regard, we support FAO in developing a new food safety strategy as international guidance, policy, and advocacy instrument to encourage increased investment and integration of food safety into the development of sustainable food system. It is a must that new food safety strategy aligns with the development of a sustainable food system and provide advice on managing unforeseen global challenges and crises that may affect the food supply, for example, new emerging hazards, antimicrobial resistance, and the current COVID-19 pandemic. It is also important to highlight the diverse context of food safety issues for each country. We note with appreciation FAO assistance to the government of Indonesia to strengthen risk-based controls at national level, which is needed to protect consumer health and to ensure good trade practices. Finally, we encourage FAO to continue its collaboration and keep provide member countries with updated comprehensive tool for food control system and guidance materials on its application to strengthen capacity of national food control system. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Indonesia. Germany, followed by Russia. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. I'm honored to speak on behalf of the European Union and its 27 member states. We would like to comment on item 2.7, rationale for a new FAO food strategy. Before commenting on the proposals before us, we would like to stress that the global challenges raised by the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and the deterioration of the environment and the lessons learned from these challenges should inform and become part of the future FAO food safety strategy to ensure more resilient future food systems that should allow access to safe, affordable, and nutritious food worldwide. In the European Union, a farm-to-fork strategy has recently been adopted, aiming at accelerating the transition to sustainable food systems that will address these multiple global challenges. It is clear that in order to be successful, our global strategies have to integrate food safety policies with those related to human and animal, plant and ecosystem health, One Health, agriculture, trade, climate, environment, and development. We note that the resolution on strengthening efforts on food safety, adopted by the 73rd World Health Assembly, has the objective of achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This resolution requests WHO to update, in close cooperation with FAO and in consultation with member states and OIE, its global strategy on food safety. We invite FAO to adopt a similar approach with the view to ensure that the FAO and the WHO strategies on food safety are fully coherent and mutually supportive. The WHO should be explicitly recognized as the key UN partner to work with in developing FAO's food safety strategy. In this framework, we also request FAO to provide strong support to the Codex Alimentarius Commission and engage in reflecting on how this body could increase its contribution to the global efforts needed to improve the sustainability of our food systems. To conclude, the European Union and its member states endorse the proposals, call for close cooperation with WHO, and offer our constructive engagement for the development of a new FAO food safety strategy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Germany. Russian Federation, followed by Switzerland. Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, dear colleagues, we would like to welcome the excellent work of the FAO in ensuring food safety as a main area of work. The strategy for food safety since 2013 has had excellent work, and we support the new food safety strategy of the FAO. We believe that the new strategy aims to organize the work of the FAO in this area and the efforts of the FAO to transform food systems and achieve the SDGs. We feel it's important to take into account in developing strategies some areas which are priorities for Russia: preventing AMR, intensifying agriculture, innovating and digitalizing food systems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Russian Federation, also for the brevity of your remarks. Switzerland, followed by Chile. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I try to be equally brief. I hope I manage. Switzerland welcomes the development of a new FAO's food safety strategy and fully supports the purpose of the new food safety strategy to address, among others, One Health issues, antimicrobial resistance, emerging zoonotic diseases, as well as issues related to climate change, agricultural intensification, new technologies, innovation, food fraud, digitalization of food systems, and circular economies. Switzerland fully agrees that the relevance of food safety to society, economic development, and sustainable food systems needs to be better understood and promoted. My delegation hopes that the new FAO food safety strategy will contribute efficiently to this aim. Switzerland also recognizes the intrinsic relationship between food safety and the achievement of the 2030 Agenda and several Sustainable Development Goals. We appreciate the focus on sustainable food systems transformation. Furthermore, in view of the increasing global importance of Codex standards, Switzerland strongly recommends FAO to ensure that the new FAO food safety strategy clearly articulates FAO's responsibility to support the Codex standard setting procedure in order to ensure that Codex standards are based on science. Switzerland fully supports the objective of the FAO to further increase interagency collaboration, and we encourage the FAO not only limit this interagency collaboration to the case of, I quote, supporting the membership to develop capacities of national food control systems, end of quote, as stated in the fourth suggested action, but also to work with the WHO in line with the 73rd World Health Assembly Resolution 73.5. That resolution, entitled, I quote, strengthening efforts on food safety, end of quote, requests the Director General of WHO to explore with the Director General of FAO a method for coordinating the two agencies' strategic efforts on food safety. The WHA resolution contains several other important calls for collaboration between WHO and FAO. Switzerland therefore requests FAO to take due account of the WHA resolution on food safety and to include the foreseen activities as appropriate as part of the activities to be undertaken as part of the new FAO food safety strategy. We can agree with the other suggested actions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Switzerland. Chile, followed by New Zealand. Chile, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora. Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chair. Chile commends and welcomes this initiative and the document which has been provided, because it picks up very well on some very topical issues related to food safety, such as the social, economic and environmental cost of safe food. Generally speaking, and given we are in the run-up stage to drafting the new strategy, Chile would like to invite FAO and its members to focus its food safety strategy in action, as has already been said by other speakers. Action in the field. Madam Chair, food safety is a sensitive issue for all governments and also a dynamic issue. In developing countries, documents alone are not enough. We need greater involvement and the closer involvement of FAO to implement the vast number of guides, manuals, studies and standards which FAO and others, in particular the Codex Alimentarius Commission, have developed over the years. In FAO's work on food safety, the focus on drawing up diagnoses and manuals should now move into a new stage where FAO focuses on working closely together with its members to help them implement. This will require a new form of working, close thinking about the use of the resources available to FAO in order to be able to support its members on issues relating to food safety with greater involvement and boosting what we already have. And that's exactly what a strategy should do. Read the script, then focus its approach to better ensure the long-term continuity and success of its work. Chile would also like to know whether it's possible to have some idea of the working program for drawing up this strategy, more specifically how members will be involved, and also what is the timing involved for drafting and approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Chile. New Zealand, followed by Canada. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. New Zealand supports a new FAO food safety strategy that aligns with the SDGs and reflects with the wider work on the transformation of food systems. We agree food safety needs to be a central pillar in the strategy, along with alignment to the SDGs to ensure efforts such as attending to climate change, food security issues are addressed in a systematic and coordinated way and informed by a scientific and capacity development perspective. We support FAO's recognition of the linkages between the proposed FAO food safety strategy and the 2021 UN Food Systems Summit. We also see the value of ensuring that the strategy reflects any relevant insights and direction from the summit process. We would also agree and note the important role that Codex plays in advancing global food safety objectives. A strong and responsive Codex will be important to advancing the FAO food safety strategy, and we echo Australia's comments around the importance of sustainable funding for the Food Safety Science Advice Program, and also echo support and thanks for the recent increase in funding to address the backlog in work. We were also supportive of the recent governance changes to the FAO, which recognise the partnership between FAO and the WHO on food safety, and also the linkages between food safety and the food systems in the FAO's work. As the EU has already raised, New Zealand would also want to note that the WHO is also in the process of updating its food safety strategy, and we would agree that it's important that the two strategies are complementary and mutually reinforcing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, New Zealand. Canada, followed by the UK. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Canada is supportive of the FAO's proposal to develop a new food safety strategy. This is a very timely initiative in view of the recent adoption of the World Health Organization resolution strengthening efforts on food safety, which calls on the WHO to explore with the FAO a method for coordinating the two agencies' strategic efforts on food safety. As the FAO pursues development of a food safety strategy, Canada would like to highlight some key considerations, namely, as noted by others, the importance of collaboration and coordination with the World Health Organization, the UN Food Systems Summit, and other relevant bodies and initiatives to avoid duplication and ensure complementarity. Emphasizing the normative work of the Codex Alimentarius Commission and the provision of scientific advice, as well as the capacity building function of the FAO to support countries in establishing national food control systems and adopting Codex standards. The importance of sustainable funding for the Food Safety Scientific Advice Program, and in ensuring the resources allocated to it and to the Codex Secretariat are retained moving forward, regardless of any changes to the FAO's organizational structure. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Canada. UK, followed by the USA. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. The paper is very welcome, and the UK supports the proposal to develop a food safety strategy. We also support several statements already made, but we would, however, expect the new strategy to set out clearly how A, the FAO will adopt a leadership position on this issue and work with the other UN agencies to increase political commitment, resourcing, improved food safety outcomes for food and nutrition security. B, the secondary impacts of COVID-19 response have affected food systems, and the implications of these changes for policies and recommendations to improve food safety. C, to measure progress and create incentives and tackle the high compliance costs facing food producers in developing countries, particularly in the informal sector. D, to provide the results of research, for example, into aflatoxins, into wide-scale application and use. E, to promote better food safety controls on the farm. Foodborne diseases are preventable, and prevention starts on the farm and needs to work along the whole value chain. F, FAO's strategic results framework will include indicators for progress with this issue. And finally, Madam Chair, may I request that the email address for the interpreters be shared again. I thank you very much.
Thank you, United Kingdom. In terms of the email address, I believe our colleague from the United States has just circulated that on the chat. So thank you for that. United States followed by China. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate the informative document prepared by FAO on this important topic. The United States reiterates its view that all food safety measures should be based on science, including the principles of risk assessment and sound scientific evidence. Further, the United States notes the recent World Health Assembly resolution calling for an updating of the WHO food safety strategy and encourages FAO to work collaboratively with WHO to ensure that the two organizations' goals for food safety and security are reflected in the development of sound, science-based approaches that will meet the needs of members. Likewise, the United States should urge FAO to leverage and align their food safety strategies with the work of Codex Alimentarius, which is the preeminent global food safety standard setting authority. Strong surveillance and regulatory authorities are integral to the development and sustain strong food safety systems. However, increased knowledge sharing, investments, and capacity building, which are central to FAO's mandate and role, are key components to supporting food safety internationally. We take serious the need for smart investments to meet the needs for holistic and preventative approaches to assuring food safety is achieved. Science, technology, and innovation can play a role to facilitate implementation of strong risk-based approaches to food safety systems to prevent foodborne illness and mitigate public health risks when outbreaks occur. The private sector produces and manufactures food, not the government. It is essential for food safety authorities to engage with the private sector in support of food safety throughout the value chain. We rely on food safety professionals in both the public and private sector to develop the data we need to see national and international food safety standards, and we rely on food business operators to ensure that the food they provide to customers is safe. The United States encourages FAO to increase interagency collaboration across UN specialized agency to build country capacity and support the Codex Alimentarius and its scientific advice bodies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, US. China, followed by Colombia. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Food safety is an important guarantee for food security. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me well? Okay.
Okay. 谢谢主席.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Food safety is an important guarantee for food security. China attaches great importance to food safety-related issues and supports the FAO in formulating a new food safety strategy, taking into account the new global food safety situation. China encourages the FAO in the process of formulating the new strategy to take on board the views and suggestions of all stakeholders, such as the WHO and Codex, so as to further enhance the attention given by member nations to food safety issues and take effective measures to strengthen the capacity building of national food regulatory systems. In particular, it should also coordinate the efforts of all parties to address global, regional, and emergency food safety issues, strengthen technical research and development, technical exchanges and training, and promote continuously the capacity to ensure global food safety. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. Colombia, followed by Mali. Colombia, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colombia supports the FAO food safety strategy, and we are committed to ensuring linking safety with sustainability to produce clean, healthy food with a minimum environmental impact. Thus, we'd like to highlight the great work of the FAO in the area of food safety in actions like the ones carried out at the previous FAO Council session in 2019, as well as the scientific assessment program with $1 million in budget for the work of that program in the coming biennium. Colombia invites the FAO to include in the proposal the possibility of technical support in building traceability models for food. In addition, in strengthening communication with consumers, where it's necessary to have capacity building for education, especially among children and young people, when it comes to food safety and the changes that future generations will have to make in terms of food safety. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I will give the floor now to Argentina. Argentina, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Argentina recognizes the central importance of food safety and its interdependence with food security. Thus, we highlight particularly the work of the FAO in the area of scientific assessment and developing standards for food safety. We welcome the decision made at the conference to strengthen the WHO-FAO Joint Scientific Assessment Program, which is fundamental for the work of the Codex Alimentarius Commission. Likewise, we appreciate the update to FAO's work in food safety. This task, as well as the actions on the ground, investment, and all actions in this area, are cross-cutting. They go beyond transformation of food systems. The importance of those transformations is something we have already raised a number of times. Food safety must be assured in all contexts and all food systems. It's not something which should be based on eventual transformations, transitions, or other factors. It should always be a priority and a pillar for sustainable food systems. With these comments, Argentina supports the initiative of the FAO to develop a new food safety strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. I've come to the end of my speakers list for members, so I have one request from an observer. I will open the floor with the usual request for brevity and to-the-pointedness. IPC AFSA, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. And thank you to the Secretariat for this comprehensive report on food safety. We welcome the systems approach taken by the FAO in approaching a new paradigm for food safety. We strongly support the proposal that a new food safety strategy should further be inclusive of structural One Health approaches, and that it should address issues such as antimicrobial resistance, emerging zoonotic diseases, climate change, agricultural intensification, new technologies, innovation, food fraud, digitalization of food systems, and circular economies. And we have just two short recommendations. First, that a new FAO food safety strategy should very carefully consider the role of scale and proximity in assessments of risk in food systems, and provide a framework that recommends legislation proportionate to risk. For example, we propose that food produced in local communities and sold directly to consumers in short time periods between production and consumption are, as appropriate, deemed lower risk than food that is produced, processed, stored, and distributed over long distances through many intermediaries and over long periods of time. And second, we ask that civil society, inclusive of smallholders, Indigenous peoples, women, and youth, are actively involved in the development of a new strategy for food safety. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. I will now give the floor to Mali. Mali, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to everyone. Mali welcomes and supports the new FAO food safety strategy. Without food safety, there will not be food security. Mali encourages the FAO to support the work of the Codex Alimentarius. We encourage collaboration between the FAO, the WHO, and the OIE, and we strongly encourage the implementation of the One Health approach. We welcome the FAO's support to developing countries in the global context, which is dominated by the excessive use of antimicrobials. Control of food safety must be strengthened from farm to fork, and we'd like to thank the FAO and encourage it in its work on food safety. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mali. I am at the end of my speakers list, so I will now turn the floor to the Secretariat. Maximo? I will turn the floor to the Secretariat, whether it's Maximo or Marcus. I turn the floor to you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, this is Marcus Lipp. I will try to address the issues. We much appreciate the overarching voice of support that we heard from all contributions. The strong support to FAO's food safety engagement and to FAO's food safety work. Of course, it was highlighted by many delegations that this development of the strategy needs to not occur in isolation, but in close alignment with WHO and in support of Codex Alimentarius and recognition of the Codex Alimentarius members' activities there. So we are highly encouraged, and we would like to thank all of the COAG members for their opinions, for their additional support, and for the points that we need to consider while developing the strategy in the future. I'll stop here, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Marcus, for the brief remarks. So I think what we will do is, in the interest of efficiency, just move on now to the next agenda item and leave the summary of this item until later this morning. So our next item up on the agenda is item 2.8, Agricultural Transformation and the Urban Food Agenda. The relevant document is COAG 2020-12. The introductory note by the Secretariat was already made available on the COAG webpage, and I will therefore open the floor directly for discussion. So the floor is now open on item 2.8, Urban Food Agenda. I give the floor now to Brazil, followed by Germany. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Person, and good morning to you and to everyone. We'll be very brief in this point. Brazil appreciates the rationale presented in COAG document 2020/12 for defining the focus of the urban food agenda on small and medium-sized cities. It is especially positive that it takes into consideration the whole urban-rural interface and the potential for reducing poverty and food insecurity. At the same time, that we could agree with the focus suggested in the document, we do caution FAO not to disregard problems that are particularly more present in larger cities, such as food deserts and food swamp. That is areas with no access to nutritious food or with too much access to unhealthy food options. The urban food environment in larger cities make evident all the issues related to food behaviors and the whole of the food environment in shaping individual choices and social organizations. They often hide a great disparity in dietary patterns between low and high income groups. Therefore, whilst we can concur with the course of action presented in the document for this debate, we do urge FAO to continue working on identifying and addressing issues specific to food systems of larger cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil. Germany, followed by Dominican Republic. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. I'm honored to speak on behalf of the European Union and its 27 member states. We take note of document COAG/2020/12 on agricultural transformation and the urban food agenda. The document shows that in view of the expected growth of the world's population, small and medium-sized cities are becoming increasingly important in shaping agriculture and the transformation of food systems in the rural-urban continuum, and are expected to account for 57% of the world's total population by 2025. We recognize that the development of sustainable food systems in functional territories holds the potential for sustainably reducing poverty and food insecurity and malnutrition in general, and that subnational and city governments have a critical role in catalyzing a dynamic urban food agenda to meet SDG 2 and many other SDGs. We look forward to the further elaboration of the concept and to the proposed increased interagency collaboration, in particular the Rome-based agencies and UN Habitat, and also to building on the work of CFS in the workstream urbanization, rural transformation and implications for food security and nutrition. Finally, we would encourage the FAO to present it at the next meeting of the Program Committee and at the next Council in December 2020. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Germany. Dominican Republic, followed by Sudan. Dominican Republic, you have the floor.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Dominican Republic supports the Urban Food Agenda of the FAO. This is a very opportune initiative to go along with the preparations for the Food Systems Summit. Integrating urban and peri-urban areas into food and agricultural production is key to achieving full food security and nutrition. Thus, we highlight the need to stimulate dialogue between all relevant actors and stakeholders to strengthen national capacities and thus facilitate agricultural transformation. In addition, we recognize the importance of the connection of the topics we're discussing under this topic with institutional initiatives like Hand in Hand and Green Cities, as well as the processes related to the United Nations Summit on Food Systems 2021. Thank you.
السلام عليكم جميعا. شكرا لإتاحة.
Good morning. Thank you for giving us the floor. Sudan recognizes that this action plan needs to focus attention on small and medium-sized cities. We need to take into account the increase in migration from rural areas to cities. We need to move forward in achieving the SDGs by creating social security systems to thus improve. The interpreters apologize. The speaker is not audible. Agricultural training needs to improve. It's necessary to work to improve agricultural transformation. The interpreters apologize again, but the sound is very poor. We must note that there are no specific statistics
الهجرة المتزايدة من الريف تؤثر سلبا على النشاط الزراعي. يعمل السودان.
This has a negative impact on agricultural activity. Sudan would like to see policies to transform agricultural systems in order to produce sufficient quantities and to create agricultural employment in cooperation with the relevant bodies. And finally, we would like to thank the organization for its work.
Thank you very much. I turn the floor to Cuba, followed by Switzerland. Cuba, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cuba supports the document Agricultural Transformation and the Urban Food Agenda. As our country prioritizes the production of food and implements the Urban Agricultural Program with good results. The program contributes to meeting the need for food of the local urban population using agroecological technologies based on mobilizing and creating a high level of territorial sustainability. In the midst of COVID-19, the program has been a great help in urban areas, as 75% of the population of Cuba lives in towns and cities. Thus, we seek to bring production closer to the population. The program focuses on producing fruit and vegetables because these are difficult to transport across long distances, particularly with the high temperatures and humidity that are common in our country. In addition, there are many unused or underutilized spaces in cities and peri-urban areas which could be used to produce food. In addition, there is a workforce available in the cities. The program allows us to use the products of all of this effort to feed animals and plants as well by processing the leftover products into organic fertilizers. Urban production covers a total of 10,000 hectares. When it comes to the document being presented, we have some concerns that we would like the FAO to clarify, such as the concept of small cities. For some countries, a small city has between 2,000 and 20,000 inhabitants, but in small island states, small island developing states, small cities are determined to be small cities based on the density of population. We recommend taking into account the specific characteristics of each context. Also, there should be the inclusion of the concept of peri-urban agriculture. Urban agriculture could reduce dependence on imports of food in small island developing states. It could also reduce the cost of transportation and storage. We recommend that the FAO exchange with UN Habitat, the agency that implements together with governments the new urban agenda as agreed in Habitat 3. With these comments and the recommendations, we support the proposal to promote the inclusion of the urban food agenda in the framework of country priorities as appropriate, as well as the institutional initiatives of the FAO, such as Hand in Hand and Green Cities, and in the process that will lead to the United Nations Food Systems Summit 2021. We request the FAO to provide support to governments to adopt the urban food agenda, taking into account the 3 pillars of sustainable development and the concept of leaving no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Cuba. Switzerland followed by Thailand. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, in fact, it's a given, it's a fact that we are living in times of rapid urbanization, which implies that in consequence, not only the urban-rural link is gaining in importance, but also the peri-urban context is increasing in relevance, which implies that over time, the role of municipalities is becoming more and more important. In this context, we would like to encourage the proposed interagency cooperation, particularly with UNCDF and IFAD, and therefore would like to support the initiative Green Cities and as an important tool in this context. Last but not least, the SDG 12 is becoming more important in the context of urbanization, so the link of consumer-producer, and would encourage FAO to continue working in a systematic way. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Switzerland. Thailand, followed by the US. Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and very good morning to all colleagues. Thailand recognizes the challenges of having sustainable food productions and strong local food supply in urban and peri-urban areas. And we see the links between the urban and rural area is very important. We also realize that the transformation toward sustainable food systems start at the household and community levels, and that urban area must be supported to become food secure. This stresses the importance of functional territories to reduce food insecurities and poverty. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have learned that the need to sustainably balance urbanization and ruralizations and the need to ensure resilient urban food system are critical. During the pandemic of COVID-19, Thailand has launched the model farm to weather COVID-19 in support of His Majesty the King Rama X and the Royal Thai government to mitigate vulnerabilities, food insecurities, and socio-economic impacts of Thai people who have been suffered from the loss of employment to sustain their livelihoods. Through this project, trainings on sustainable agriculture and the principle of sufficiency economy philosophy (SEP) has been provided. This aims to increase food production at the household and community level and to expand food distribution channel to the market level in order to bridge gaps between producers and market that can shorten food supply chains. In addition, the government of Thailand has also established action plan on the urban farming and forest garden in implementing the green city policies and the sustainable urban agriculture development. These initiatives offer 3 main purposes in mitigating the environment issues in the cities, enhancing the self-reliance of the urban dwellers, and providing the recreation benefits. In addition to that, the current agricultural development plan also aims to strengthen the capacities of proximity rural small medium cities to support food securities of urban area, thus increase the well-being and economy of rural area in return. Thailand is pleased to exchange knowledge and at the same time learn from other countries through bilateral and multilateral cooperation with government and private sectors in order to expedite implementation of the urban food agenda. Thailand supports the proposed use of the functional territories perspective to assess the role of new rural-urban realities in shaping agriculture and transforming food system. We also agree to focus FAO urban food agenda on small and medium-sized cities in consideration of their predominant role of functional territorial dynamics. With this statement, Thailand encourages FAO to support government and members in adopting the urban food agenda and to strengthen multi-stakeholder coordination to improve efficiency in urban food system and accelerate transformation towards sustainability. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Thailand. The US followed by Canada. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States acknowledges that the FAO framework for the urban food agenda could benefit from more focus on small and medium-sized cities. These cities have the potential to play an important role in supporting structural transformation that delivers improvements in food security and economic, social, and environmental sustainability. We support a flexible approach to developing this agenda. The United States does not support the urban food agenda's one-size-fits-all policy recommendations, such as food pricing manipulation, front-of-the-pack labeling, geographic indicators, and procurement policies that promote agroecological production. Agricultural supply chains are complex and dynamic. There are few, if any, one-size-fits-all solutions. Overly prescriptive policy recommendations will not support member states in identifying solutions that meet their own needs. We also note the urban food agenda's recommendations prejudge the outcomes of Committee on World Food Security negotiations on voluntary guidelines on food systems and nutrition. These negotiations are far from complete. We request more information on the development, review, clearance, and dissemination of the urban food agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Canada followed by China. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada agrees with FAO's analysis of the importance of urban food dynamics to global agriculture and food systems and welcomes the strategic framework of the urban food agenda as a valuable technical contribution in this space. Canada assumes that other UN organizations already have knowledge and capacity internal to their organizations related to urban governance, development, waste management, for example, in UN Habitat, the UNDP, UNEP. So Canada would recommend that the FAO build on the capacities which exist in other organizations. On a related note, Canada would like to obtain clarity on how the FAO envisions funding this work. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Canada. I give the floor now to China. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. China welcomes the urban food agenda and encourages FAO to integrate the current developmental trend of the food system to work together with the other member states and in terms of their urbanization trends. We support FAO to further strengthen the urban food agenda and its connection with the hand-in-hand initiative to further elevate the quality and standards of global food security and to realize the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I have come to the end of my speakers list. So at this point, I will turn the floor over to the Secretariat for a response. Jamie Morrison is here, and so I will pass the floor to him. Jamie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all of the positive and insightful comments that were provided by members. If I may just go through a number of specific questions which were asked or points made. Firstly, to Brazil's point about the importance of not disregarding large cities. We would completely agree with that, and I think the emphasis on small and medium-sized cities in the current paper was simply to ensure that we are not missing the important role that these size cities, and particularly their close linkage with rural localities, is playing in processes of structural transformation. And indeed, with the recently launched Green Cities initiative, there are specific sections of the initiative focused on large cities, on intermediate cities, and on small and medium-sized cities, recognizing that the challenges that they're facing, that the solutions which are most applicable will vary widely across those different categories of cities. So, yeah, just re-emphasizing, fully agree with the point that Brazil was making in that respect. In relation to that, the question from Cuba about how we're conceptualizing small cities, right? We have tended to use the official DESA classification in determining which cities fall into different categories, but at the same time, it is important to recognize that there is significant context specificity in terms of what these different sizes of cities means in different contexts. And I think the reference to small island developing states is particularly pertinent in this regard. And maybe in that respect, we need to be looking at a different categorization, not just using size as a categorization for formulating the type of support we're providing to different cities, but also bringing in these different dimensions. The comments, for example, from Switzerland and Thailand on the importance of stressing sustainable consumption and production and circular economy in relation to the work of the Urban Food Agenda is well taken. The Urban Food Agenda has three strands in terms of enabling urban planners through the provision of, or support the provision of, evidence-based policy environment to allow food to be brought into their planning in a more robust and holistic way. It has a strand on actions to support sustainable consumption and production in cities, and also to expand city-to-city exchange, for example, being one example of how we share knowledge globally. And there are many examples of that in the work that we do in relation to the Urban Food Agenda. The question from the US as to who were requesting more information on the dissemination and clearance of the Urban Food Agenda. Just to clarify that the FAO's framework for the Urban Food Agenda was launched by Director General Graziano about 2 years ago. And we're actively working now in up to 30 countries globally, taking this more systemic, holistic approach to supporting cities globally. And finally, the point from Canada on how the work is being funded. I think you would have seen the launch of the new Green Cities initiative by the Director General. Going forward, this will be a major focus of resource mobilization efforts, but already in relation to the funding of work in relation to the Urban Food Agenda, we have significant extra budgetary support, including, for example, through the FMM, and thanks to the many countries who are supporting the work through the FMM, which has allowed us to expand the program of work quite substantially over the past 3 to 4 years. So thank you, Chair. I hope that answers the questions.
Thank you, Jamie. Seeing no other requests for the floor, What I propose to do now, we have summaries for the items we have looked at this morning. So I would suggest we now take the time before our lunch break to get through all of those summaries. So I am going to turn back to the first item we looked at this morning, the Code of Conduct for food loss and waste reduction, and ask the Secretariat to put the draft summary up on the screen. First time of the day, I'm sure we'll have technical problems. There you go. Excellent. All right. I will read this through in its entirety, and then we can return to the top and work our way down. So the committee welcomed the proposed voluntary code of conduct for food loss and waste reduction, COC, and noted the importance of the COC and the role it can play in contributing to food loss and waste reduction globally and to sustainable food systems development and achieving the SDGs, in particular SDG Target 12.3. The committee provided a number of comments, queries, and suggestions for improvements to the document and requested FAO to prepare a revised document in consultation with members and under the guidance of the COAG Bureau to be submitted to the FAO Council at its next session. The committee encouraged FAO members to apply the Code of Conduct once endorsed and requested FAO to continue providing demand-driven policy and technical support to countries in their food loss and waste reduction efforts, including for the measurement of food loss and waste, considering national and regional contexts. The committee endorsed the proposed follow-up actions for FAO once this Code of Conduct is endorsed, namely, developing codes of good practice and technical guidelines that are informed by the generic framework offered by the Code of Conduct, supporting members in the application of the Code of Conduct and the subsidiary guidelines prepared from it, and monitoring the implementation of the Code of Conduct and reporting to COAG on progress made. I will ask to screen back up to the top and will open the floor for any comments. Taking some time for our members to collect their thoughts. I see no request. Oh, I do. I give the floor to Germany.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the summary. And just one proposal for para 1. At the end of the sentence, we could put one more sentence by saying, the committee asked FAO to follow a holistic approach to include all stakeholders along the whole food chain, as highlighted in CFS HLPE report and policy recommendations on food loss and waste. Full stop.
Thank
you.
Thank you for that suggestion. I see no requests for the floor. Perhaps we can scroll down so that, oh, I give the floor now to Argentina. Argentina, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Gracias, Presidenta. Thank you, Madam Chair. In paragraph 2, certain members expressed concerns about adoption of the document. Sorry, we're having an interruption. The interpreters can't hear Argentina very clearly.
The sound is, we're having difficulties with sound.
¿Me escuchan bien?
We can now hear the speaker. The interruption has gone. Yes, I was saying paragraph 2. We mentioned that comments, queries and suggestions were provided by the committee to improve the document, and we would like specific reference to be made to our concerns about short supply chains in terms of international trade. We would like this to be specifically addressed during the revision process.
Okay, so can I suggest that we add after improvement to the document, comma, including related to short supply chains and trade, comma. Does that meet your needs, Argentina?
Sí, preferiría que...
I would prefer if you could say and international trade, please.
Okay, thank you for the suggestion.
No sé si estamos yendo párrafo por párrafo.
I don't know whether we're going through this paragraph by paragraph.
Accept all comments for any paragraph, so please go ahead.
Con relación a los últimos párrafos que...
In the last paragraphs, they talk about implementation of the code once it's been approved. I don't know whether paragraphs 3 and 4 should be included because the code hasn't been approved yet. This wasn't the language we used when we were discussing the process on the code for fertilizers. We don't have major objections, but we would prefer not to preempt on the outcome of a process which still hasn't started.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. We had included this in an attempt to reflect some of the discussion that took place and views from members on actions after endorsement, but I am in the hands of the committee. We can certainly delete those and leave it to council discussion, for example, to identify anything of this nature that it considers useful. So we can put those paragraphs in square brackets. I give the floor now to New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Apoyamos el primer comentario de Argentina, incluyendo el aspecto específico de la cadena de suministro corta y el comercio internacional. La segunda parte, la segunda preocupación, pero para mantener el contenido de lo que se había debatido, quizás podemos prepararnos para el párrafo 3.
The first part in terms of encouraged FAO members to apply the COC once endorsed. You could put that in brackets, but you could probably keep the second part of paragraph 3 from requested, because that's irrespective of whether or not it's endorsed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that suggestion, which I think was simply to delete. So I don't think we need that requested. I believe the proposal was to delete encouraged FAO members to apply the COC once endorsed and. So we can remove the square bracket at the beginning of paragraph 3. I'm not seeing any calls to the floor, so let's just go ahead. Please delete encouraged FAO members to apply the COC once endorsed and. So just delete that. Stopping at and. So go ahead and delete So the committee requested FAO to continue, etc. So remove the square black bracket at the end of paragraph 3. And then I guess paragraph 4 is much more focused on the code of conduct, so I'll leave that in square brackets. I'm seeing no further requests for the floor, so let's go ahead and delete paragraph 4 as suggested. And I will give the floor now to Philippines. Philippines, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We also recognize that the concern by Argentina, and also that practically at this stage, maybe it might be premature to take action on the proposed follow-up actions. However, there are many delegations who also cited these during the discussions. And perhaps what I would suggest is, instead of completely deleting the paragraph 4, maybe at least the committee took note of the proposed follow-up actions, because this would be a marker for us in the future discussion of the council and maybe of this committee as well, because we think there would be value in looking back into what was discussed and raised by members during the discussion on the follow-up actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippines, for that constructive suggestion. I'm seeing, I will give the floor to Germany. Go ahead, Germany.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I'd just like to support what has been said by the Netherlands in regard to by New Zealand, sorry, in regard to para 3, and what has been said by the Philippines on para 4. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no other requests for the floor, I will take it that the committee is comfortable with that. So let's remove the square brackets from took note of. And with no other calls for the floor, I think we can consider this summary good to go to the drafting committee for their final touches. Thank you very much for a very impatient discussion. I'm feeling more optimistic. So let us move on to the summary for item 2.7, rationale for a new FAO food safety strategy. The secretary could please put that up on the screen. Mark has the most stressful job. Here we go. All right, item 2.7, rationale for a new food safety strategy. I will read it out in its entirety and then we can go through it. The committee recognized the connection between food safety and food security and the role of food safety towards FAO's support of more sustainable and inclusive agricultural and food systems. The committee emphasized the need for the new FAO food safety strategy to contribute to the 2030 agenda and reflect appropriately the ongoing transformations in food systems. The committee requested FAO to develop a new food safety strategy to serve as an international guidance, policy, and advocacy instrument for decision makers that can be used to encourage increased investments and the consistent integration of food safety into the development of sustainable food systems, food security policies, and agriculture development strategies. The committee requested FAO to collaborate with WHO and Codex Alimentarius to ensure that their respective food safety strategies are aligned and mutually supportive. The committee encouraged FAO, in line with the principles of UN reform, to further interagency collaboration in order to support FAO members to strengthen the capacities of national food control systems at their request as appropriate. So if we can scroll back up to the top, showing as much as we can, starting with paragraph 1. So I'll take comments on the 3 paragraphs we have before us. The floor is open for any comments from members. I give the floor to Argentina.
Gracias, Presidenta. Tenemos dos comentarios.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 2 comments regarding paragraph 1. We would remove the reference to more, and we would just have support of sustainable and inclusive agricultural and food systems. We don't think the word more is necessary.
Y en el segundo párrafo.
And in the second paragraph, we understand that it should end with the 2030 agenda. We don't think that exactly 2030 agenda, because the issue of food safety is independent of any transformation process of food systems. It is inherent to food security and not necessarily inherent to transformations of food systems or any parameters that might be established for those transformations.
Okay, so the suggestion is to delete in the second paragraph starting at "and," going all the way to the end of that sentence.
Así es. Gracias, Presidenta.
That's right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So go ahead and delete that. I see no request for the floor, so, I give the floor to Chile. Chile, go ahead.
Gracias, señora.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a question regarding paragraph 3. We understand that the food safety strategy looks to support countries, but not to develop new standards. We already have WHO and the Codex Alimentarius to do that. So I think it's a bit strange to have this wording. I'd like a bit more time to consult on this paragraph. Number 2. Thank you.
Okay, so I will move to the next speaker on my list. And if you can make a suggestion for deletions or changes that would help with that, I'd appreciate it. Sudan, you have the floor.
The voice is not clear. The speaker's voice is not clear. There's an interruption. Mrs. President, I suggest to add nutrition in paragraph. I'm sorry, but the voice was not clear, so I couldn't hear the paragraph.
If you could get closer to your mic, perhaps, and speak more slowly.
Mrs. President, I wish to add the word nutrition in paragraph 3. So the phrase becomes food security and nutrition. This is for paragraph 3.
Okay, and I apologize, we've lost our computer here, but I have a paper copy, so I'm taking this down. So this is paragraph 3. It would read, consistent integration of food safety into the development of sustainable food systems, food security and nutrition policies, and agriculture development strategies. If I've captured that. I don't think we can expect people to continue without the words in front of them. So I'm sure we will all understand that the computer has shut itself off and is rebooting. I don't know if, and I guess no other computers are. In which case, perhaps then, and thanking the committee for their flexibility, I guess we could perhaps pause in our consideration of summaries and take the last 25 minutes to make a start on the next agenda item. Will be the most efficient use of our time. So please hold on to your comments on this. I see Chile, New Zealand, and Germany have asked for the floor, but without the text, I think it's hard to proceed. So with the indulgence of the committee, and looking in my notes to see where we are, let us start, and we'll come back to this after lunch. So the next item on the agenda is item 3.2, towards a global program on sustainable dryland agriculture in collaboration with the Global Framework on Water Scarcity in Agriculture, WASAG, in a Changing Climate. The relevant document is COAG 2020/17. I'm going very slowly. New Zealand, I'm going to lower your hand, I'm assuming. If you did want to speak, put it back up. The introductory note by the Secretariat was already made available on the webpage, so I will open the floor directly for discussion. And I see Brazil is ready to go. Thank you so much, and thank you to the committee members for your flexibility as we adapt to difficult situations. Brazil, the floor is yours.
Thank you again, Madam Chairperson. We thank FAO for presenting such a well-structured program on this important subject. We particularly appreciate the fostering of partnerships and networks, as well as actions to articulate local knowledge and ways of life with regional and national governments. The technology transfer strategies proposed as part of this third pillar also seem particularly positive, since they suggest a bottom-up strategy taking into account expectations and user needs. We further note that the program, as proposed, puts a strong emphasis on the use of data analysis, include remotely sensed data and statistical information, and the use of a toolbox with validated technologies. However, we remind FAO to do not disregard the need of working on the ground, close to local reality, so as to understand whether the target audience is able to absorb the model proposal. Furthermore, we believe it is essential to contemplate communication strategies so as to allow access to existing tools and platforms. We also suggest inclusion of actions on recovery of degraded areas and the use of biodiversity for generation of value. In Brazil, especially in semi-arid region, we note that there are several possibilities for using biodiversity to generate value for local populations. Furthermore, we would like to call FAO's attention to paragraph 1 of document COAG/2020/17. It currently does not mention the arid areas of South America, and we suggest their inclusion in the program. At least in the case of Brazil, the characteristics of our semi-arid region are perfectly aligned with those in the document. As for COAG's information document 2020/E/15, we note the objective of capturing, conserving, distributing, and using water for sustainable agricultural production and ecosystem management. We suggest inclusion of water reuse in that point, as they may have a significant impact on the water management of rural properties. It is also our view that these topics could clearly contemplate the question of the use of waters of different qualities in agriculture and livestock, which would also include initiatives related to biosaline agriculture. We further suggest to delete two specific practices from the program, such as nature-based solutions, given the wide range of contests in these programs, which aims to reach, and the fact that we should avoid one-size-fits-all solutions. Positive since they suggest a bottom-up strategy taking into account expectations of user needs. We further note that the program, as proposed, puts a strong emphasis on the use of data analysis, included the remotely sensed data and statistical information, and the use of toolbox of validated technology. However, we remind FAO not to disregard the need of working on the ground, close to local reality, so as to understand whether the target audience is able to absorb the model proposed. Furthermore, we believe it's essential to contemplate communication strategies as so to allow existing tools and platforms. We also suggest inclusions of actions of recovery of degraded areas and the use of biodiversity for generation of this value. Finally, we note a strong emphasis in the document on investments. Even though it is important, this is an important element, we urge FAO not to disregard its essential role in providing and enforcing technical cooperation, and suggest this to be strengthened in the program. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, Brazil. I give the floor to Germany, followed by the Dominican Republic. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. I'm honored to speak on behalf of the European Union and its 27 member states. We welcome the proposed development of a global program on sustainable dryland agriculture as set out in document COAG/2020/17. We fully agree that a systems-based approach is needed to address the challenges faced by dryland areas, especially the smallholder production systems in low-income, low-capacity countries, in view of their importance for food security and nutrition. In this regard, we would like to stress the importance of forests and integrated water resources management for the program's specific technical objectives, given the relevance of agroforestry systems not only to food production, but also to nature and biodiversity conservation in dryland areas, which in turn impact on resilience and systems sustainability in the long run. The need to step up the fight against zoonotic diseases and the One Health approach should be considered under the program's specific objectives, since extensive and nomadic livestock systems are included in drylands and are of vital importance to vulnerable people around the world. Moreover, approaches at multiple scales are needed to fulfill the program's objectives, encompassing all relevant elements at local level, in order to build resilience and promote sustainability. In this regard, innovative approaches are critical in tackling the challenges posed by population growth and climate change in particular, as the reference documents correctly state. In order to avoid building new silos of fragmented areas of work, it is of the utmost importance that the global program on sustainable dryland agriculture be fully integrated into the FAO's global program and be subject to monitoring and evaluation, including under the SDG monitoring framework. Considering the above remarks, The EU and its member states generally support the program proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Germany. Dominican Republic, followed by Australia. Dominican Republic, you have the floor.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Dominican Republic highlights the importance of the work of the FAO in promoting sustainable agriculture in drylands, where by definition, the inhabitants, most of them family farmers, encounter serious obstacles. Agri-food production in drylands takes place on degraded soil with an absence of water flows and a lack of inputs. These challenges are further complicated by the climate crisis. In our case, as a small island developing state, my country encounters extreme meteorological threats, including droughts and flooding. For these reasons, we support the global program on sustainable dryland agriculture, and we support the transformation of agriculture in drylands in the framework of the Hand in Hand initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Australia, followed by China. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Australia is supportive of the focus by the FAO on sustainable dryland agriculture through the development of this global program. Australia is one of the driest inhabited continents in the world, and Australian farmers experience greater annual volatility in yield and price than most, and we understand that there are numerous innovation and technologies available to improve dryland agriculture, enhance productivity, and adapt to the changing climate. But we also know that adoption is often hindered by inadequate means of knowledge sharing and implementation limitations. We welcome the focus of the global program on collaborative efforts and the intent to build on existing initiatives, such as the Global Framework on Water Scarcity in Agriculture. We also note the intent to utilise the framework of the Hand in Hand initiative, and in due course, we would welcome further advice on the practicality of this proposal. Australia has a long history of undertaking agricultural research in countries where dryland agriculture is a primary focus. For example, the Australian Centre for Agricultural Research, ACR, has conducted a number of projects in Afghanistan, including one on integrated catchment management and capacity building for improving livelihoods, and another on forage options for smallholder livestock in water-scarce environments. ACR has also recently been involved in the development of the CGIAR Dry Arc initiative that aims to improve and streamline dryland agriculture innovations, integrate them into agri-food settings, and maximise their potential to strengthen resilience, enhance food and nutrition security, and increase employment opportunities in dry regions, especially for women and youth. Australia looks forward to continuing to partner with the FAO through initiatives such as Dry Arc, so that together we can better solve problems which span national borders and demand international cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. China, followed by Mexico. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China welcomes the efforts of the FAO through the Global Program on Sustainable Dryland Agriculture. We support small-scale farmers in drylands, and we welcome that the program is a part of the Hand in Hand initiative, and so we encourage the FAO to apply all available resources in order to strengthen all forms of partnerships and to mobilize resources in multiple manners in order to promote the global program and the transformation of dryland agriculture.
Thank you. I will turn the floor to Mexico, followed by Indonesia. Mexico, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Roughly 40% of the surface area of Mexico is covered by drylands, and It's true that productive activities in those areas are adapted to the local climate. In recent years, the lack of rain has become even more severe. This, linked with soil degradation, has increased the vulnerability of the populations living in those areas and has put the food security of the entire country at risk. That is why Mexico supports the development of a global program on sustainable dryland agriculture. We also support the transformation of agriculture in drylands in the framework of the Hand in Hand initiative. This initiative aims, through international cooperation, for countries to support each other using their own strong points in order to face the challenges that are before them. In particular, Mexico has developed its capacities for modeling and predicting climate. However, other countries in the region have other strong points, for example, when it comes to transferring useful information for local producers. There have been a number of partnerships based on each party's strengths, but we need to continue working to strengthen South-South cooperation, particularly when it comes to exchanging information and adaptation experiences. Thus, we consider it's fundamental to have guidance from this program, which should indeed have a global vision and scope, as its name indicates, so that no one will be left behind in our planet's various drylands, and to contribute to transformational changes for sustainable agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico, Indonesia, followed by Canada. Indonesia, you have the
It's an Indonesian turn, right? Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Despite none of Indonesian land belong to the what's so-called the dryland according to FAO classification, but about 1% of our area, which is equivalent to about 2 million hectares of land, belongs to the dry, subhumid, and semi-arid areas, with the rainfall annually less than 1,000 millimeters. These areas are inhabited by a couple of million of people. It is also important to note that all agriculture in this area are conducted by smallholders. The area is characterized by long dry season and short but high intensity and often torrential rainfall during wet seasons. Hence, water harvesting and redistribution, as well as erosion control measures, are important. I would also like to acknowledge that a few years back, we had a project in this area with the support of FAO. It is in the interest of Indonesia to have exchange of experience with other countries dominated by dry land on sustainable dryland agricultural practices. Hence, Indonesia endorses the global program on sustainable dryland agriculture and supports the hand-in-hand initiatives as a key to advance the 2030 agenda. We also support the plan for the formation of 4 pillars for addressing problems of dryland agriculture. Furthermore, in relation to knowledge sharing and information exchange, Indonesia is also in agreement with the South-South and Triangle cooperation. Finally, based on our experience in the dry, subhumid, and semi-arid areas of eastern Indonesia, Indonesia is willing to strengthen its collaboration with countries in the dryland areas for the implementation of the sustainable dryland agriculture. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. Canada, followed by Capo Verde. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Canada would like more information on FAO efforts to develop a program on sustainable dryland agriculture. Canada would also appreciate to know how the FAO will ensure full advantage is taken on existing platforms that address similar issues, such as the UNCCD, as well as access information sources, such as the World Overview of Conservation Approaches and Technologies, or WOCAT. The WOCAT includes a database of sustainable land management practices and efforts to prevent and reduce land degradation through soil and water conservation technologies and their implementation approaches. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Canada. Capo Verde, followed by the Russian Federation. Capo Verde, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. Cabo Verde welcomes the preparation of document COAG 2020-17, which raises technical issues in agriculture and water management without which we cannot solve our contemporary issues, like increased food production, biodiversity protection, poverty reduction, and elimination of hunger. The Global Framework on Water Scarcity in Agriculture, WASAG, initiative was an important step toward awareness raising on the issues of water scarcity in agriculture. WASAG provides a leverage to heighten the focus on sustainable dryland agriculture, which is interrelated to water scarcity. Since its establishment, WASAG has been successfully in building its network and in becoming a working partnership. We are pleased that, as reported in document COAG Info 2020-16, WASAG has followed on the recommendations that were made during COAG 26, when it was presented for the first time. Soon after, my country, Cabo Verde, was particularly happy to host the first WASAG International Forum on Water Scarcity in Agriculture in March 2019, with the participation of more than 300 delegates from 40 countries and the support of Switzerland and in collaboration with Italy. WASAG is becoming a key role player in the water and agriculture sectors, as evidenced by the 10 webinars it hosted during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic, some of which attracted more than 500 participants. As proposed by this document, COAG 2020-17, coupled with hand-in-hand initiative, WASAG provides a platform to support and strengthen the global program on sustainable dryland agriculture. It goes without saying that sustainable dryland agriculture is only possible through a good water and soil management, and there is no agriculture production without water. As a result of climate change, the frequency of drought flooding is increasing. These events are becoming ever more severe and with impacts on lives, agriculture, food security, and on other resources. The short interval between these events scarcely leaves time for economic recovery of the affected countries and the resources required for the much needed reconstruction. Mitigation and prevention efforts are not available within the limited time frame within which they are needed. Chairperson, our continent has the biggest dryland area in the world. And for us, sustainable dryland agriculture reflects one of the 4 regional initiatives, namely building resiliency in Africa's dryland. It also contributes to promote and achieve the other 3, namely Africa's commitment to end hunger by 2025, sustainable production intensification and value chain development in Africa, and partnership. Therefore, we welcome actions toward allowing the effective policy tools available already are disseminated, adopted, and implemented, especially the ones that streamline the knowledge at local level through government officials, NGOs, academia, private sector, and political governance, support countries in finding the needed resources for implementation, promote the production and sharing of local knowledge, leading to ownership by the local people and to their empowerment. In closing, our regional group and Cabo Verde endorses the global program on sustainable dryland agriculture in collaboration with the global framework on water scarcity in agriculture, hand-in-hand initiative to advance 2030 agenda. We particularly exhort all FAO members states to join and actively support WASAG and request FAO to report regularly on progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Cabo Verde, on behalf of the African region. We have reached 12 o'clock here in Rome, and so we are going to lose our interpretation. I will beg their indulgence for a few minutes just to outline the plans for the afternoon. I would like to reconvene at 1 o'clock in Rome time. At that point, I have a number of speakers still left on my list, so I would propose immediately after the lunch break, we continue with this item, 3.2, get through our speakers list and the Secretariat response, and then after that, we will move directly back to item 2.3, the proposal for the establishment of a subcommittee on livestock, and work through that. And then taking time in the afternoon to go over the summaries that are outstanding for the various topics. And then we will proceed with our agenda as outlined in the provisional timetable. So continuing on with 2.11 and then proceeding. I note that I do have 12 speakers left on item 3.2. And so we will definitely be coming back to the speakers list after the lunch break to finish up agenda item 3.2. So with that, unless there are questions. Oh, I see there's something in the chat. Oh, I beg your pardon. I misspoke in terms of which statement we just heard. We also have to hear from Senegal on this point for the African Regional Group. My apologies. So with that, we will break for lunch and we will be back here at 1 o'clock Rome time. Thank you very much for your patience this morning and your flexibility, and see you in an hour.